Hello, welcome back. Today I will be showing you how to make this cute little keychain in the shape of a pineapple. Keep on watching. For this project you will again need yarn of your choice, and we're going to start by making slip stitch. This is how I do the slip stitch. It's the easiest way. You go under and over and under and just pull it tight. Now we're going to make a chain of 4. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we're going to put this chain together with the slip stitch. Once we have that, I would advise actually chaining 1, which I did not do this. I was trying to test it out to see how it's going to work, but chaining 1 will actually help you out. It's going to give you that leverage that you need. But even without it, it's not going to be a big deal. So now we're going to make 8 single crochets right in the center of that chain that we just connected. And once we finish those 8, we're going to put them together with a slip stitch. And right here I'm going to put everything together with the slip stitch, starting in that first chain from the hook that we used to start this row. So now you are supposed to have 8. You're going to chain 1 and you're supposed to have 8 stitches in this circle. Now we're going to do 2 single crochets in each of these chain spaces, which will eventually leave us with 16 stitches in total. Make sure to count these, because you need to have like something similar to a straight circle once you're done, like complete flat surface, because it's going to be the base for the pineapple. And these are the last 2 single crochets that I'm going to insert in the last stitch from the previous row, and then I'm going to connect this circle to the first chain of this row, and I'm going to do it with a slip stitch, and then I'm going to chain 1. To start the second row, I'm going to yarn over, and in that same chain space where I had that slip stitch, I'm going to make a double crochet. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and now I'm going to yarn over, and in between those 2 stitches, the double crochet and the slip stitch, I'm going to make this puff stitch, which is yarn over 3 times, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through. I do it 3 times, and then I pull through all these stitches. Now I'm going to yarn over, and then I'm going to make another double crochet in the second chain space from that previous one that we did. Now I'm going to make another double crochet, and once we do the double crochet, we're going to again make another puff stitch in the same way we did before, and we're going to pull the yarn through that chain space in between the base and that double crochet that we just made. Once we do that, we are going to yarn over, and we're going to pull through all these chains, through all these. loops on the hook, and we're going to continue doing the same thing. Double crochet in each space, and then from there we are going to make a puff stitch. Make sure to make double crochets in the second chain space from the previous one. As you can see here, so I go into the second chain space from the previous double crochet that we made, and at this point your work is starting to curl up a little bit, which means that we are making the sides properly. So pay attention not to make too many of these, because if you don't do it in every second chain space, in every second stitch, you are going to end up with a lot of these little bubbles and it's not going to work. So yarn over and into the second chain space, make a double crochet, and then in that space in between make the puff stitch by yarning over 3 times or 4 times, depending on how puffy you want it to be. Sometimes I do 3, sometimes I do 4. As you can see, it's really starting to form those sides at this point. Once you finish this row, you will probably end up with having 8 of these little puff stitches. Count them because you're supposed to have one on every second stitch, and because we had 16 stitches in the previous row, this should result in you having 8 puff stitches here. Depending on the yarn, if you use the yarn that's thicker than this, it could happen that you needed you needed fewer stitches in that initial little circle. So instead of 8 and having 16 eventually, you probably ended up with 12, like having first 6 and then 12. In that case, you will have 6 of these. So just divide it by 2. Now, the second row we're going to do exactly in the same way. So we're going to make double crochet, and in that chain space in between the slip stitch and the chain one, not the slip stitch, but the chain one that we made and the double crochet, we're going to make the first puff stitch in the same way as we did before. And once we pull through, we're going to yarn over, and then we're going to go in between those 2 puff stitches. It's kind of like on top of that puff stitch. That's where we're going to pull the needle through. So pull through, yarn over, pull through, and pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. So now we have the double crochet, and we're going to go in between those 2 spaces, and we're going to make that puff stitch. So this row is going to be practically the same as the previous one, with the difference that you are going to be working on top of the previous row with the puff stitches, and every double crochet that you're going to be making is going to be on top of that puff stitch. So it's not going to be in between, it's going to be on top of it. So just collect those 2, that little V on top of the puff stitch, and that's where you're going to place your double crochet, and then just work in circle, and you're going to end up again with 8 puff stitches. Pay attention when you are reaching the end where your stitch is going to fall, so that you don't end up making an extra puff stitch, because then it's just not going to look good. And once you reach the end, just put it together with a slip stitch and then chain 1. So now we are going to do the 3rd row. I did not record that because the 3rd row was exactly the same. and this is what you have at this point after finishing row 3. Now we're going to do a decrease row. Decrease row is done in the easiest way, so it's not visible, by just pulling out and putting the needle through those first front parts of the stitches, so like in between, as you can see, in between those little 2 V's, and then just yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. So catch one and the second one. Don't go through both of them, because in that case you will make it puffy and you will make it more visible. Like this, the decrease is not visible. So we're going to do this for each and every stitch, well actually for each and every pair of stitches, and we're going to end up with 8 stitches in the end. And that's going to be like our initial, well, where we actually started. And once you do that, once those 8 stitches are done, you're going to slip stitch, and this is where we're going to change the yarn to green in order to make the leaves. But before we make the leaves, we're going to stuff the pineapple with some pillow stuffing, or you can use anything else, but pillow stuffing is the best for this project since it has a little bit bigger spaces in between the puff stitches. So this is what it's going to look like. Here you can cut the yarn, and eventually you're going to connect that yarn to the green one, just with two little knots, and then you are going to start chaining. Here I chained 9 or 10, depending on the leaf. Sometimes I went 9, sometimes I went 10, depending on the length that I wanted. I wanted them to be long and to curl. And once you chain 9 or 10, you're going to start with first with a slip stitch into the second chain from the hook. Then you're going to go to a single crochet, then you're going to go to a half double crochet, and depending on the size of your project, you can go even with a double crochet. And like I did here, to make that leaf a little bit wider, but then you start decreasing. So next one is going to be half double crochet, and then the next one is going to be single crochet, or actually here I also did half double. So then the single, and then all the way down to slip stitch, and we're going to connect the leaf to the body of the pineapple again with a slip stitch. And now, as you can see, I'm going to catch the entire stitch here, and I'm going to do a slip stitch, and I'm going to do a slip stitch into the next chain again. And here I'm going to make another leaf. I'm going to go again with 9 or 10 crochets, the 10 stitches, and I'm going to do them in the same fashion as I did the previous one. So in the second chain from the hook, I'm going to make a slip stitch. This is going to make that little peak at the top, then single crochet, then half double crochet, and so on. So this is just to create that illusion of a leaf that's on a pineapple that goes like very narrow at the top, then goes a little bit wider, and then is narrow at the bottom. And I'm going to repeat this as many times as I think is needed, and then I will do the second row of these leaves on top, because pineapples usually have a lot of rows of leaves on top, and it makes them look like they have a crown. So that kind of like it just looks better once you're done. So I skipped some portion because everything was just repeating itself, and I wanted to show you how I started doing the last row of the leaves. I did them actually on top. So I start the leaf by pulling my needle through those base stitches of the previous leaf. Sorry if I got out of frame. And then I do a slip stitch, and I start chaining again 7 or 8 for this row. I wanted them to be a little bit shorter than the previous one, and then I start again from the second chain space from the hook with the slip stitch, and then increasing it to all the way to half double crochet, and then decreasing it again down to slip stitch. So I do this in circle, but I don't end up having the same number of leaves as in the previous row. It's not really necessary, but this is going to give you extra volume on this little pineapple, and it's going to look richer and cuter. So as you saw, I tried to do a double crochet, but I realized that it's just too much because it's the top leaf, and the top leaves should actually be like a little bit thinner and more elegant. So I undid them, and now I'm just continuing with slip stitches until the end, and then again into that row in the middle, and I do a slip stitch, and then I do the second slip stitch on top of the previous leaf, and this is going to make the leaves on top be in the middle of the previous leaves of the leaves of the previous row, which is going to give it extra dimension. And this is something that you will probably have at the end. So here you can cut the yarn, pull it through to secure it so it does not come undone. And here I wanted to secure the work, but then I realized that it's easier to do it with that needle for the yarn, and that's what I'm going to do because I wanted to close that space on top and to make these leaves a little bit extra puffy and lifted. So right now I'm trying to like straighten them a little bit so that they can be seen, so they're not curled up too much. But they really look cool. I really like how it turned out. And here I'm taking that big plastic needle for the yarn, and I'm just going to pull it through the top of the pineapple a few times. This yarn, this time I decided to leave it because I still want to decide how I want to finish my keychain. But this one turned out very cute, and if you leave this yarn at the end on top, it can actually help you secure the chain that you use for the keyring, but you can also just sew in the keyring with this yarn. You don't actually have to use the chain. It's totally up to you. And this is the finished product. They turned out so cute. I am in love. They're very cute and they're very squishy. If you like this little tutorial, please give a comment, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.